Speaker of the House,
Boo!
Mike Johnson.
Sorry.
Senator Ben Cardin. Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Why are you calling him minority leader, huh?
Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell. Senators, members of Congress, distinguished guests. Mr. Speaker, I want to thank you for giving me the profound honor of addressing this great citadel of democracy for the fourth time.
The real question here is, will he be partisan? That is what I am interested in.
We meet today at a crossroads of history. Our world is in upheaval. In the Middle East, Iran's axis of terror confronts America, Israel, and our Arab friends. This is not a clash of civilizations. It's a clash between barbarism and civilization.
We are never seeing a stable Middle East, man. Never.
It's a clash between those who glorify death and those who sanctify life.
Hitlerite shit right from the beginning.
For the forces of civilization to triumph, America and Israel must stand together. Because when we stand together, something very simple happens. We win, they lose.
Crazy how it's been 50 years and Islamic Iranian influence has only grown.
And my friends, I came to assure you today of one thing: we will win.
Like, Iran has only gotten a stronger and stronger hold on their proxies in the Middle East.
Ladies and gentlemen, like December 7th, 1941, and September 11th, 2001, October 7th is a day that will forever live in infamy. It was the Jewish holiday of Simchat Torah. It began as a perfect day, not a cloud in the sky. Thousands of young Israelis were celebrating at an outdoor music festival. And suddenly, at 6:29 a.m.,
I haven't heard of this. I'm interested.
as children were still sleeping soundly in their beds in the towns and kibbutzim next to Gaza, suddenly heaven turned into hell. 3,000 Hamas terrorists stormed into Israel. They butchered 1,200 people from 41 countries, including 39 Americans.
A lot of that was IDF, actually, but, you know.
Proportionately, compared to our population size.
It was like 59
That's
11s.
like 29 11s in one day.
29
And these
11s!
monsters, they raped women, they beheaded men, they burned babies alive, they killed parents in front of their children, and children in front of their parents. They dragged 255 people, both living and dead, into the dark dungeons of Gaza. Israel has already brought home 135 of these hostages,
Killed a bunch
including
of the
7
rest.
who were freed in daring rescue operations. One of those freed hostages, Noor Gamani, is here in the gallery, sitting near my wife, Sarah. On the morning
She looks happy.
On the morning of October 7th, the entire world saw Noah's look of desperation as she was violently abducted to Gaza on the back of a motorcycle. I met Noah's mother, Leora, a few months ago. She was dying of cancer. She said to me, "Prime Minister, I have one final wish. I wish to hug my daughter Noah one last time before I die." 2 months ago, I authorized a breathtaking commando rescue operation. Our special forces, including a heroic officer named Arnon Zmora, who fell in this battle, rescued Noah and 3 other hostages. Noah, I think it's one of the most moving things. When Noah was reunited with her mother, Leora, and her mother's last wish came true. Noah, we're so thrilled to have you with us today. Thank you. Many hostage families are also here with us today, including Eliyahu Bibas.
Do you remember
Bibas
the hostage families despise this guy? The
is the
non-stop
grandfather
protests out the
of those
Knesset have
2
been led by those
beautiful
families.
red-headed boys, the Bibas boys, toddlers. And they were taken hostage with their mother and and Eliyahu's son. The entire family was taken hostage. 2 beautiful red-haired children taken hostage. What monsters. And with us also is Iris Chaim, whose son Yotam bravely escaped Hamas captivity with 2 other Israelis, and tragically they were killed making their way back to our lines. We have with us also the families of American hostages. They're here.
Are we going to talk about the hostages the IDF shot even though they were waving a white flag? Or the dozens that have been killed in indiscriminate Israeli bombings?
The pain these families have endured is beyond words. I met with them again yesterday, and I promised them this: I will not rest until all their loved ones are home. All of them.
Or dead. Even though I've consistently blocked hostage release deals because you want to continue the genocide and don't care about the hostages.
As we speak, we're actively engaged in intensive efforts to secure their release, and I'm confident that these efforts can succeed. Some of them are taking place right now.
Like he's rejected dozens of
I want to thank
ceasefire
President
agreements.
Biden for his tireless efforts on behalf of the hostages and for his efforts to the hostage families as well.
Even though you said that Biden was siding with Hamas.
I thank President Biden for his heartfelt support for Israel after the savage attack on October 7th. He rightly called Hamas sheer evil. He dispatched 2 aircraft carriers to the Middle East to deter a wider war. And he came to Israel to stand with us during our darkest hour, a visit that will never be forgotten. President Biden and I have known each other for over 40 years. I want to thank him for half a century of friendship to Israel and for being, as he says, a proud Zionist. Actually, he says a proud Irish-American Zionist.
The only Irish Zionist in existence.
My friends, for more than 9 months, Israel's soldiers have shown boundless courage. With us today, is Lieutenant Avichai Reuven.
Kamala Harris loves this guy also. That's not true. We actually have plenty of indication she's nowhere near as friendly towards Netanyahu as Biden is.
Avichai is an officer in the Israeli paratroopers. His family immigrated to Israel from Ethiopia. In the early hours of October 7th, Avichai heard the news of Hamas's bloody rampage. He put on his uniform, grabbed his rifle, but he didn't have a car. So he ran 8 miles to the front lines of Gaza to defend his people.
Man, when he hears he has a chance to slaughter Palestinian babies. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy.
You heard that right. He ran 8 miles, came to the front lines, killed many terrorists, and saved many, many lives. Avichai, we all honor your remarkable heroism. Another Israeli is with us here today, and he's stand up right next to Avichai. This is Master Sergeant Ashraf al-Bakhiri.
Yeah, I saw this.
Ashraf is a
Former
veteran
IDF
soldier
chiefs of staff
from
and
the
Mossad
Israeli
directors
Muslim
saying
community of
Netanyahu is a threat
Ras.
to Israel.
On October 7th, Ashraf too killed many terrorists. First, he defended his comrades in the military base, and he then rushed to defend the neighboring communities, including the devastated community of Kibbutz Be'eri. Like Ashraf,
And maybe my European racism, but why do these feel like token
the Muslim
shoutouts?
soldiers
It's not a coincidence that he found, like, the minority soldiers to praise, okay? Trust me. There's plenty of colorism in Israel. If you look at the average IDF soldier, I promise you they are not like Ethiopian, okay? DEI. Fascists love their DEI.
A third hero, Lieutenant Asa Sofer,
They got ruled an
is also here
apartheid
with
state
us.
like 5 days ago.
Asa fought as an officer in the Tank Corps, and he was wounded in battle. He was wounded in battle while protecting his fellow soldiers from a grenade. He lost his right arm and the vision in his left eye. He's recovering, and incredibly, within a short time, Asa will soon return to active duty as a
To kill
commander
more
of a tank company.
Palestinians! Woo! Yeah, 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 yeah! Woo!
I just learned there is a fourth hero here, Lieutenant Jonathan Ben Chamo, who lost a leg in Gaza and continued to fight.
By the way, this is fascism. The like celebration of soldiers continuing the fight, even when you have a massive number of soldiers you could call upon and they're injured or like disabled. It's like the idea of living for war. Like the veteran does not get to enjoy retirement after they've suffered a severe injury. It's you live for war. This is very specifically a fascist thing. In America, when you're injured in war, you're going home, man. They're not gonna like force you out there with a missing arm like some psychopath. But here, you live for the fight. That's what you're here for. Some Ukrainians do come back. Yeah, but Ukrainians are fighting down to the man. Like Ukrainians are fighting like bit for bit. To fight back against Russia, you know? They're not doing that with Hamas. I think they volunteer to keep fighting, but Netanyahu is choosing to celebrate it. My point is, it's ghoulish to celebrate this. Oh yeah, man, they lost a leg and they're gonna go back and keep fighting. Why would you celebrate that? Shouldn't you be celebrating them like retiring? Shouldn't you say like they had their moment of heroism and now they're going to retire? Like, that's the psychotic part. You can volunteer back if you want. It's about celebrating it. Life is lived for war. Classic tenet of fascism. Yeah, the Ukrainians aren't living for war. They just don't want to fight. They don't want to lose.
These are the soldiers of Israel. Unbowed, undaunted, unafraid.
See? They have no shortage of soldiers. They're doing this because they like celebrating life until death.
As the Bible says,
fuck you.
Am kelavi yakum. They shall rise like lions. They have risen like lions. The lions of Judah, the lions of Israel.
This, do I need to tell you this is fascism? Come on. What am I here for? They live and they die. They live to die for Israel. They live to serve the state. They are religious allegories.
Ladies and gentlemen, the men and women of the IDF come from every corner of Israeli society, every ethnicity, every color.
Well, yeah, there's a you can script. There's mandatory service.
Right, religious and secular. All
because you forced the Orthodox Jews to serve.
With the indomitable spirit of the Maccabees, the legendary Jewish warriors of antiquity. With us today.
Again, constant allegories to like imagine historical biblical past. It's exactly the same shit that that like Nazis do with Hyperborea. Like, yeah, you're like your Aryan ancestors who strode 12 feet tall across the plains of the Nordic lands.
Is Yechiel Leiter, the father of one of those Maccabees. Yechiel's father escaped the Holocaust and found refuge in America. As a young man, Yechiel moved to Israel and raised a family of 8.
To be fair, the Maccabees did exist. It doesn't matter whether or not they existed. The point is the allegory. The Maccabees in real life, as they existed, are not the Maccabees as referred to in like the fascistic ramblings of a, come on, use your head. Like the America existed in the 1950s. Did the America of the 1950s that conservatives pretend existed exist? No, it was a fantasy.
Children. He named his eldest son, Moshe, after his late father. Moshe became an exemplary officer in one of our elite commando units. He served with distinction for 2 decades while raising 6 beautiful children of his own. On October 7th, Moshe volunteered to return to combat.
October 7th? What happened?
4 weeks later, he was killed when a booby-trapped mine exploded in a tunnel shaft right next to a mosque. At his son's funeral, Yechiel said this: if the state of Israel had not been established after the Holocaust, the image engraved in our collective memory would have been the photograph of that helpless Jewish boy in the Warsaw Ghetto holding his hands up in the air with Nazi rifles pointed at him. But because of the birth of Israel, Yechiel continued.
Now we get to be the ones pointing rifles at the kid in the concentration camp. That's true.
Because of the courage of soldiers like my son Moshe, the Jewish people are no longer helpless in the face of our enemies.
Now we are the ones building the camps. Now we are the ones with the indomitable military force. Now we are the ones who appeal to religious historical allegory to justify our ethnic supremacy. Woo!
Yechiel, please rise so we can honor your son's sacrifice. And I pledge to you.
What is Bibi's taking Holocaust victims? Many hardliner Israeli Zionists think the Holocaust victims were weak. They describe the state of Israel, its formation, as the difference between the previous Jew who was weak and let themselves succumb to the Holocaust versus the current Jew who is strong with their mandatory conscription, their heavy militarization, their fascist rhetoric. It's a pretty common talking point. Also, Bibi is a Holocaust revisionist.
You and to all the bereaved families of Israel, some of whom are in this hall today, the sacrifice of your loved ones will not be in vain.
Source, you can Google it. Netanyahu Holocaust statements.
It will not be in vain, because for Israel, never again must never be an empty promise. It must always remain a sacred vow. And after October 7th, never again is now.
1/3 of Israeli Holocaust survivors live in poverty. Jesus Christ.
My friends,
They must
defeating
really
our
care
brutal
about them.
enemies requires both courage and clarity. Clarity begins by knowing the difference between good and evil. Yet incredibly, many anti-Israel protesters, many choose to stand with evil.
Here we go.
They stand with Hamas. They stand with rapists and murderers. They stand with people who came into the kibbutzim.
He's talking about us.
Into a home. The parents hid the children, the 2 babies, in the attic, in a secret attic. They murdered the families, the parents. They found the secret latch to the hidden attic, and then they murder the babies. These protesters stand with them. They should be ashamed of themselves.
Fetterman's wearing a suit for this. The one time he wears a suit. Classic. Thank you, Fetterman. In case you ever wondered how the American people could be largely against the Vietnam War protesters, the student protests, even though the Vietnam War has gone on to be thought of as a mistake by basically everyone, this is how. This is a joint session of Congress applauding a foreign leader calling college protesters who are anti-genocide in our country pro-Hamas. And they're standing and clapping for it. This is how.
They refuse to make the simple distinction between those who target terrorists and those who target civilians, between the democratic state of Israel and the terrorist thugs of Hamas.
Democratic State of Israel, by the way, corrupt, incredibly unpopular leader who's only holding on to power through a war cabinet right now, had his cronies in the Supreme Court change the rules, massive fraud found, Bill, Bibi grew up in Philadelphia like Bill Cosby. You don't need to tell me that, man. All the prominent Israeli leaders spent time in America. That's why every time you see a TikTok from Israel, it's somebody who grew up in Brooklyn being like, hey guys, no apartheid here. And it's a photo of them getting an ice cream.
We learned from the National Security Director, U.S. Director of National Intelligence, that Iran is funding and promoting anti-Israel protests in America. They want to disrupt America. So these protesters burn American flags even on the 4th of July. And I wish to salute the fraternity brothers at the University of North Carolina who protected the American flag.
Holy shit, he's referring to the racist-ass frat boys who charged over to defend a flag post. Jesus Christ.
Protected the American flag against these anti-Israel protesters.
Were those the ones making monkey noises? No, that was Mississippi. Kill 200,000 Palestinians. Protect the piece of cloth.
Iran is funding the anti-Israel protests that are going on right now outside this building. Not that many, but they're there. And throughout the city.
Yep. All agitators are actually being paid by like an ethnic enemy who exists both within and without society. That's true, man. You know, they call it the Iranian question.
Well, I have a message for these protesters. When the tyrants of Tehran, who hang gays from cranes and murder women for not covering their hair, are praising, promoting, and funding you, you have officially become Iran's useful idiots.
Hypers, if you too are a soldier of the Ayatollah. Who here got their Ayatollah checks? Salute. Soldiers of the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps.
Some of these protesters, it's amazing, absolutely amazing. Some of these protesters hold up signs proclaiming gays for Gaza. They might as well
do you know that if you're gay in Gaza, they don't like you? Did you know that if you're gay in Gaza, you're likely to be killed by an Israeli JDAM? Oh man, that's crazy.
Signs saying chickens for KFC.
Whoa! Being clapped by the anti-gay Republican caucus.
These protesters chant from the river to the sea. But many don't have a clue what river and what sea they're talking about.
I'm talking about...
They not only get an F in geography, they get an F in history.
The Mississippi.
They call Israel a colonial state. Don't they know that the land of Israel is where Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob prayed, where Isaiah and Jeremiah preached, and where David and Solomon ruled?
Constantly invoking like biblical historicism as a way of justifying the legitimacy of current rule. Hey, don't you know this is historically Jewish territory because like 4 billion years ago, some guys who wear like loincloths and killed boars with slings were here, you know? The Mediterranean River.
For nearly 4,000 years, the land of Israel has been the homeland of the Jewish people. It's always been our home.
Except for all the time the Arabs were there, you know, like the whole time.
Always be our home.
Literally just blood and soil. Just explicit blood and soil. We're cheering for blood and soil. This is Lebensraum. This is indistinguishable from any rhetoric any Nazi employed in like expanding the homeland for the Germanic people.
It's not only the campus protesters who get it wrong. It's also the people who run those campuses. 80 years after the Holocaust. 80 years after the Holocaust.
Bosch, Jews have had a continuous presence in Israel for thousands of years. That's crazy, man. Are you aware of any other groups that have had a continuous presence in Israel for thousands of years?
The presidents of Harvard, Penn, and I'm ashamed to say my alma mater, MIT, couldn't bring themselves to condemn the calls for the genocide of Jews. You remember what they said? They said, it depends on the context. Well,
so this is a foreign leader denouncing our academic leaders for not suppressing the free speech of students and for speaking honestly about their right to protest a genocide in another country.
Let me give these befuddled academics a little context. Anti-Semitism is the world's oldest hatred. For centuries, the massacre of Jews was always preceded by wild accusations. We were accused of...
You just accused Iran of funding the anti-genocide protests, dude.
Everything from poisoning wells, to spreading plagues, to using the blood of slaughtered children to bake Passover matzahs. These preposterous anti-Semitic lies led to persecution, mass murder, and ultimately to history's worst genocide, the Holocaust. Now, just as malicious lies were leveled for centuries at the Jewish people, malicious lies are now being leveled at the Jewish state. No, don't applaud. Listen. The outrageous slanders that paint Israel as racist and genocidal are meant to delegitimize Israel, to demonize the Jewish state, and to demonize Jews everywhere.
Remember, you're anti-Semitic, you criticize Israel. I haven't heard this one before.
And no wonder we've witnessed an appalling rise of anti-Semitism in America and around the world. My friends, whenever and wherever we see the scourge of anti-Semitism, we must unequivocally condemn it and resolutely fight it, without exception.
I agree, which is why you need to be in a prison in Nuremberg, man.
And don't be fooled.
In The Hague, yeah.
When the blood libels against the Jewish state come from people who wear fancy silk robes and speak in lofty tones about law and justice, here's a case in point. The prosecutor of the International Criminal Court has shamefully accused Israel of deliberately starving the people of Gaza. This is utter, complete nonsense. It's a complete fabrication.
Guys, remember the Holocaust? It was really bad how people did the Holocaust. By the way, any credible reports you hear about us systemically slaughtering the ethnic population that we want gone, totally incorrect. Guys, remember when the Holocaust happened? It was really bad when the Holocaust happened. By the way, all of these, like, literally thousands of pages of international experts and leaders all around the world, like, unanimously concluding that we're using starvation as a weapon against the Palestinian people, all of it's fake.
Israel has enabled more than 40,000 aid trucks to enter Gaza. That's
allowed, by the way. Also 40,000 for 2 million people over the course of, what has it been now? 9 months? Do the math.
Million tons of food. And that's more than 3,000 calories for every man, woman, and child in Gaza.
Incorrect.
If there are Palestinians in Gaza who aren't getting enough food, it's not because Israel is blocking it. It's because Hamas is stealing it.
Of course, of course. Like, this is a position so psychotic that even the Biden administration has spoken against it. Like, even the Biden administration has made it pretty clear that Israel has been insufficient in their allowing of aid into the Gaza Strip, you know?
So much for that lie, but here's another. The ICC prosecutor accuses Israel of deliberately targeting civilians.
Who could ever believe such a thing if you haven't looked at any evidence to that point?
What in God's green earth is he talking about? The IDF has dropped millions of flyers, sent millions of text messages, made hundreds of thousands of phone calls to get Palestinian civilians out of harm's way.
Remember that time the World Kitchen people were on a scheduled route delivering scheduled aid, and the truck they were in got struck by a drone, and then people crawled out of the flaming wreckage to another truck, which also got struck by a drone, and then they crawled out of the flaming wreckage of that truck to get struck by another drone. And then afterwards, the IDF was like, I don't know.
But at the same time, Hamas does everything in its power to put Palestinian civilians in harm's way. They fire rockets from schools, from hospitals, from mosques. They even shoot their own people when they try to leave the war zone. A senior Hamas official, Fatri Hamad, boasted, listen to this, he boasted that Palestinian women and children excel at being human shields. His words, excel at being human shields. What monstrous evil.
Yeah, remember, the Israeli response to human shields is, well, you know, like the thing about human shields is that they're supposed to momentarily deter the person who's trying to shoot you, but for Israel, for the IDF, they're just like, oh, bonus kill. You're telling me I get to kill a Hamas insurgent and a civilian in the same strike? Holy shit! Christmas came early. Probably not the metaphor they'd use because, you know, I don't know, Hanukkah came early?
Israel, every civilian death is a tragedy. For Hamas, it's a strategy. They actually want Palestinian civilians to die so that Israel will be smeared in the international media and be pressured to end the war before it's won. This would enable Hamas to survive another day and, as they vowed, to carry out October 7th again and again and again. Well, I want to assure you, no matter what...
Netanyahu, when he realizes that October 7th actually is coming up this year and every year afterwards, you know...
pressure is brought to bear.
I shouldn't do it. Thana, I don't want to hear it. Thana, I don't want to hear it. That was reflexive. Yeah. Hamas leaders say that Palestinian children make excellent human shields, and I am here to tell you that no, our bullets go through them very easily. Woo! Yeah! 50 trillion more to Israel!
The vast majority of Americans have not fallen for this Hamas propaganda. They continue to support Israel. And I want to say...
Actually, the majority of Americans support a ceasefire.
Thank you, America. And thank you, senators and House members who continue to support us, continue to support Israel, continue to support the truth, and see through the lies. But as for the minority that may have fallen for Hamas's con's job, I suggest you listen to Colonel John Spencer. John Spencer is head of urban warfare studies at West Point. He studied every major urban conflict. I was going to say in modern history. He corrected me, no, in history. Israel, he said, has implemented more precautions to prevent civilian harm than any military in history and beyond what international law requires.
Nice one guy. Could we appeal to the input of literally every other expert ever on Earth? I notice you've chosen a specific guy and not, say, for example, the aggregate opinion of a large body of experts. Do you think perhaps we could defer to the crowd on this one and not one guy? I mean, you can put it to the polls. Is Ian Koczynski the bestest boy on earth? But if the one person you're asking is my mom, then you might not get a reliable answer. Expert witnesses say that Ian Koczynski is in fact the bestest boy on earth. What are you gonna do? There was a neo-Nazi rally near me recently. I'm scared, TBH. Oh, are you, do you live near the Capitol building? I'm sorry. Don't worry, his speech should be done soon.
That's why, despite all the lies you've heard, the war in Gaza has one of the lowest ratios of combatants to non-combatants casualties in the history of urban warfare.
This statistic came to me in a dream. I do not question it.
And you want to know where it's lowest in Gaza? It's lowest.
That absolutely cannot be. No, it's not. He's just like, he could say anything here. Like, the environment that we're in right now is one in which he could say literally anything. If he went up there and he said, and new reports say that we only 100 Palestinian civilians have been killed versus 500,000 Hamas, and he would get the same number of claps. He could say he hasn't killed a single civilian. It doesn't matter. There's no fact checking on in a congressional address, you know?
In Rafah, remember what so many people said? If Israel goes into Rafah, there'll be thousands, maybe even tens of thousands of civilians killed. Well, last week, I went into Rafah. I visited our troops as they finished fighting Hamas's remaining terrorist battalions. I asked the commander there, how many terrorists did you take out in Rafah? He gave me an exact number, 1,203.
This is good. This is definitely how we measure. You know, this is unironically like when the Red Cross went over to Germany to inspect their concentration camps and relied on figures presented by the Nazis in a tour given by the Nazis. You're literally like, oh man, how many civilians have we killed? You're asking like Heinrich, you know? Oh yeah, how many like innocent Jews have you killed? None. 9. Oh, okay. Like writing that down. Wait, why are we relying on military reports? You're supposed to have outside. Oh, but we can't get outside reports, can we? Because you block foreign journalists from accessing the strip and you kill domestic journalists. Ah, that's true. That's true.
I asked him, how many civilians were killed? He said, Prime Minister, practically none.
Practically none. Also, how the f would you know? Okay, this is wrong on so many levels. First of all, how would a military officer have conducted the necessary investigations to determine whether or not any person was a civilian or not? For 2, what if they're lying? For 3, don't you guys have a recorded history of calling everyone you kill a terrorist, whether or not they actually are? Like, you'll find 50 shredded babies next to a discarded rifle and say, oh yeah, they were all like hiding together in a coat to use the rifle, you know? They were like standing on each other's shoulders. Man, I can't believe we can get away with this shit, man.
With the exception of
42,000 dead and rising. Nope. That recent report, what was the actual number? What was the Lancet? An estimate of nearly 200,000 dead, nearly 10% of the population of Gaza. And it could be significantly higher. We don't know how many are dead because Israel has specifically murdered local journalists. They literally drone striked the family houses of dozens and dozens of Palestinian journalists and have killed so many foreign workers that journalists are no longer entering Gaza to like do extensive investigation. They've killed journalists, Western journalists, in safe zones.
a single incident where shrapnel from a bomb hit a Hamas weapons depot and unintentionally killed 24 people? The answer is practically none. You want to know why? Because Israel got the civilians out of harm's way, something people said we could never do, but we
don't. Look at any of the videos of like fathers holding up the headless corpses of their children, you know, like that new ones come out like every single day because it keeps happening, you know.
Did it.
Yeah, they got the civilians out of harm's way by sending them to heaven quickly.
These heroes here today, the heroic soldiers of Israel, should not be condemned for how they're conducting the war in Gaza. They should be commended for it.
What is this?
Another time I had a friend of mine killed and I was very upset. And I asked this Vietnamese for his ID card and he said, "Come biếc." And that means I don't understand in Vietnamese. And it just pissed me off, so I pulled out my knife and I killed him. And it didn't bother me at all. I just called in, I said, "One VC kill." And they said, "How do you know he's a VC?" And I said, "Because he's dead." And they laughed and said, "Okay."
All right, yep, there we go. Most ethical and honest soldiers report on civilian casualties.
I want to thank all of you here today who forcefully opposed the false accusations of the ICC and stood up for the truth. These lies are not only libelous, they're downright dangerous. The ICC is trying to shackle Israel's hands and prevent us from defending ourselves.
From killing more innocents.
If Israel's hands are tied, America is next. And I'll tell you what else is next.
Wait, what? What? If Israel stops genociding Palestinians, then What? What are you referring to? Also good? But also, what are you referring to?
The ability of all democracies to fight terrorism will be imperiled.
Good.
That's what's on the line.
Thank God.
So let me assure you.
Get out of the Middle East.
The hands of the Jewish state will never be shackled. Israel
will
will
never stop killing
itself.
babies. We will never stop slaughtering children.
My friends, in the Middle East, Iran is virtually behind all the terrorism, all the turmoil, all the chaos, all the killing.
Damn, I hope they win.
And that should come as no surprise. When he founded the Islamic Republic, Ayatollah Khomeini pledged, "We will export our revolution to the entire world." We will export the Islamic revolution to the entire world. Now ask yourself, which country ultimately stands in the way of Iran's maniacal plans to impose radical Islam on the world?
Hopefully no
And
one.
the answer is clear. It's America, the guardian of Western civilization and the world's greatest power.
Glaze. Please don't stop giving us weapons. Please don't stop giving us money. Glaze. Hey, I know that we constantly trash America internally and we're nothing but ingrates when it comes to the massive amounts of money and weapons you give us. Please don't stop giving us. I know we might have overdone it a little bit and some people over here are questioning the role that we have in constantly supplying our genocide. Please don't stop giving us money. Please don't stop giving us weapons.
That's why Iran sees America as its greatest enemy. Last month, we heard
I mean, also, we, like, facilitated the rule of the Shah in a coup over there and suppressed the population for decades. Us and the British. So, yeah.
a revealing comment, ostensibly about the war in Gaza, but about something else. It came from the foreign minister of Iran's proxy, Hezbollah, and he said this: "This is not a war with Israel. Israel," he said, "is merely a tool. The main war, the real war, is with America." Iran's regime has been fighting America from the moment it came to power. In 1979, it stormed the American embassy.
It is kind of... I wonder what happened in 1979, man. They just unprompted stormed the American embassy. 1979, famously a year in which nothing happened, and then they stormed the American embassy. You know, it's crazy. It is kind of funny how when it comes to foreign policy, in Iran, they're kind of split between geopolitical pragmatists who think that Israel is a front for America, and anti-Semites who think that America is a front for Israel, you know?
It held scores of Americans hostage for 444 days. Since then, Iran's terrorist proxies have targeted America in the Middle East and beyond. In Beirut, they killed 241 U.S. servicemen. In Africa, they bombed American embassies. In Iraq, they supplied explosives to maim and kill thousands of American soldiers. In America, they actually sent death squads. They sent death squads here to murder a former Secretary of State and a former National Security Advisor.
It sure would be inconvenient for this narrative if we actually recently succeeded in killing one of the highest up members of their government. Say, under the Trump administration, a totally unprompted airstrike on an Iraqi airport to kill Soleimani and several others.
And as we recently learned, they even brazenly threatened to assassinate President Trump. But Iran understands,
Inshallah,
that to truly challenge America, it must first conquer the Middle East. And for this, it uses its many proxies, including the Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. Yet in the heart of the Middle East, standing in Iran's way, is one proud pro-American democracy, my country, the State of Israel.
Did they imply Iran tried to assassinate Trump? Basically, everything that he said is a lie or misinformation in some sense. This is about, like, there was briefly a concern that Iran had done the shooting for the guy, and Iran was like, no, we didn't do it, but, like, you know, maybe one day, haha. It doesn't.
That's why the mobs in Tehran chant death to Israel before they chant death to America.
Apparently, half the Democratic side of the joint Congress is gone. By my count, roughly 100 of the 212 House Democrats and 27 of 51 Senate Democrats and Dem caucusing independents are present, meaning the other half of that caucus is absent. When this happens, they fill the seat with non-members. So right now, the half of the Democrat side of Congress is filled with, like, Joe Plummer. Just chilling. Yeah, Rashida Tlaib is still there. Could have gotten a bigger sign, but, you know, whatever.
America. For Iran, Israel is first, America is next. So when Israel fights Hamas, we're fighting Iran. When we fight Hezbollah, we're fighting Iran. When we fight the Houthis, we're fighting Iran. And when we fight Iran, we're fighting the most radical and murderous enemy of the United States of America. And one more thing. When Israel acts to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons that could destroy Israel and threaten every American city, every city that you come from.
Jesus Christ.
We're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting you.
God willing, one day Iran wins and takes the Middle East. I swear to God, I just want to stop hearing about it. Let there be peace in the Middle East, okay? Under the Ayatollah. Yeah, I saw Annie's message that Mark Kelly is quietly clapping for Netanyahu during some of the more unhinged Zionist statements. Maybe Mark Kelly's off the ideal ticket. Is it Bashir then? Is it just Bashir or Cooper?
My friends, if you remember one thing from the speech, remember this. Our enemies are your enemies. Our fight is your fight, and our victory will be your victory.
Don't patronize me, Benjamin. Don't patronize me either, Benjamin. I know about Mark Kelly. He can still keep it the f*** in if he wants to be the vice presidential candidate.
Ladies and gentlemen, that victory is in sight. Israel's defeat of Hamas will be a powerful blow to Iran's axis of terror. Another part of that axis, Hezbollah, attacked Israel on October 8th, a day after the Hamas attack. It has launched thousands of missiles and drones against us. 80,000 of our citizens in northern Israel evacuated their homes, becoming effectively refugees in their own land. We are committed to returning them home. We prefer to achieve this diplomatically.
There's still a very high possibility that a war ends up breaking out. Especially, man, I don't know. I don't actually know. Whoever wins in November, I don't know which one would increase the likelihood of a war between Israel and Hezbollah.
But let me be clear. Israel will do whatever it must do to restore security to our northern border and return our people safely to their homes.
It's crazy that we're still talking about the hostages when A, the hostage families despise Netanyahu, and B, there's like 10 living hostages left, maybe. There's like none. There weren't that many to begin with. There were just a few hundred.
Last Friday, a third Iranian proxy, the Houthis, attacked Tel Aviv with a deadly drone. It exploded a few hundred feet from the American consulate, killing one person and injuring 9. On Saturday, I authorized a swift response to that attack.
Notice how he never talks about how the Hamas leadership is in Qatar and they never try to do anything with that info? Yep, because Qatar is part of OPEC. Oh God, wait, did I make a fool of myself? Did I forget? Oh yeah, of course, yeah. They were an early member of OPEC. For a moment, my memory is so bad. I have this flit of like What if you're wrong? What if you're thinking of a different country? Which happens often. Israel doesn't want to meaningfully oppose Qatar because they don't want to get on the wrong side of OPEC because they're trying to normalize relations with Saudi Arabia. So once again, one of the, in terms of what Israel could do, if they murked the leadership of Hamas in Qatar, I don't think that would be morally wrong. Those guys are monsters. Hamas leadership, they're like wealthy, corrupt magnates who send people to their death from afar for personal gain. They are not freedom fighters, okay? Some of the people on the ground may be. They are not. But Israel won't do that because they're hiding in Qatar, and they're hiding in Qatar because they know it'll protect them.
My friends, for decades, America has provided Israel with generous military assistance. And a grateful Israel
Please don't stop. Grateful Israel.
With critical intelligence that saved many lives. We've jointly developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth. I choose my words carefully. We've jointly developed...
Oh, by the way, speaking of grateful Israel, Ben-Gvir, the cabinet minister, endorsed Trump 5 hours ago. So that's a grateful Israel. Ben-Gvir, Biden tried to stop Israel from destroying Hamas. He endorses Trump for president. That's a grateful Israel, by the way.
Developed some of the most sophisticated weapons on earth that help protect both our countries. And we also help keep American boots. We help keep
Oh, hold on. Sorry. The grateful Israel that was so grateful that he threw a hissy fit because we withheld the 2,000-pound JDAMs that he was using to mulch entire neighborhoods of civilians. He said we were withholding the weapons they were entitled to, said it was inconceivable, and that Biden was preventing them from finishing the war they needed to finish. Grateful Israel. Grateful Israel, our greatest ally.
Americans' boots off the ground while protecting our shared interests in the Middle East.
Really excited to see how liberals talk in 15 to 30 years. Mark my words, by the time all of you are like 20 years from now, every liberal who was around during this point in time is going to pretend they were on the opposite side of things. They did the exact same shit with the Iraq War. They did the exact same shit with the Vietnam War, where in retrospect, everyone became a dove. Everyone. Because it became so embarrassing in like a retrospective sense, you know? Senator Ossoff has walked out on the speech. Knew I loved that guy. Thank you, Ossoff.
I deeply appreciate America's support, including in this current war. But this is an exceptional moment. Fast-tracking U.S. military aid can dramatically expedite an end to the war in Gaza and help prevent a broader war in the Middle East. In World War II...
Yeah, man, Israel is doing so much to prevent a broader war in the Middle East. Literally, at this moment, the war cabinet is like, we can't promise we're not going to go to war with Hezbollah. Quick in and out, 20-minute war, okay? They've only got 250,000 fighters.
As Britain fought on the front lines of civilization, Winston Churchill appealed to Americans with these famous words: "Give us the tools and we'll finish the job." Today, as Israel fights on the front line of civilization, I too appeal to America. Give us the tools faster and we'll finish the job faster.
Netanyahu wildly incorrect on which side of World War II he would have been on had his ideology been transplanted to that time.
My dear friends, the war in Gaza could end tomorrow if Hamas surrenders, disarms, and returns all the hostages.
Lend-Lease was very different from free aid. Yeah, it's kind of crazy how even in World War II, we were still, you know, lending weapons, whereas with Israel, they just get it for free. Literally the greatest war the world has ever seen, and we were still, like, conducting business over it. Meanwhile, for Israel massacring children, we're like, up, another 20 trillion, boom! American taxpayers get... That's crazy, dude. That's great. Don't they buy them at a discount? Yeah, which amounts to like free money, but they also do get shit for free. The amount of support we've given Israel is so extensive and like varying. And so long-standing too.
But if they don't, Gaza should have a civilian administration run by Palestinians who do not seek to destroy Israel. That's not too much to ask. It's a fundamental thing.
It kind of is. They kind of deserve to want to destroy Israel. I'm sorry. You've killed, like, all their friends and family. Every Palestinian knows personally someone who's died to your bombs. Probably multiple people. They kind of deserve to want to destroy you. You want to destroy them for an infinitely smaller, you know, amount of proportional violence.
That we have a right to demand and to receive.
The war will never end because by destruction of Hamas, what they mean is destruction of any opposition or insurgency, which will never end because the insurgents are right. So there will never be any end to it, you know? This only ends one of two ways. You either completely eradicate the population or you give them their land. That's what happened in Ireland. That's what happened in Iran. That's what happened in India. That's what happened in South Africa. Like in every situation like this, the balancing point that Netanyahu is dishonestly advocating for right now literally cannot happen. And the reason he's lying right now to say this is because he knows that no matter what happens, there will always be Hamas in the Gaza Strip. Because remember, how do you know he's Hamas? Because he's dead. As long as they want to kill, there will be Hamas to kill. So they will always have an excuse for why they haven't established a peaceful, resettled Gaza.
A new generation of Palestinians must no longer be taught to hate Jews, but rather to live in peace with us.
What about Israelis being taught not to be racist against Arabs? I mean, if you poll the Israeli population, they're Hitlerite. When it comes to the Arabs, you know, should they be re-educated?
Those twin words, demilitarization and de-radicalization, those two concepts were applied to Germany and Japan after World War II, and that led to decades of peace, prosperity, and security.
That's because we weren't seeking to eradicate the entire German and Japanese populations, whereas that is what you are trying to do with the Palestinians.
Following our victory, with the help of regional partners, the demilitarization and de-radicalization of Gaza can also lead to a future of security, prosperity, and peace. That's my vision for Gaza. Now, here's my vision for the broader Middle East. It's also shaped in part by what we saw in the aftermath of World War II. After that war, America forged a security alliance in Europe to counter the growing Soviet threat. Likewise, America and Israel today can forge a security alliance in the Middle East to counter the growing Iranian threat. All countries that are at peace with Israel and all those countries who will make peace with Israel should be invited to join this alliance. We saw a glimpse of that potential alliance on April 14th. Led by the United States, more than half a dozen nations worked alongside Israel to help neutralize hundreds of missiles and drones launched by Iran against us. Thank you, President Biden, for bringing that coalition together.
Yeah, do keep in mind that missile barrage was A, performative, and B, after Israel struck the Iranian consulate, killing many high-level diplomats in a completely, like, insane, unprompted move. And they were like, well, there were Palestinians in there, we had to.
The new alliance I envision would be a natural extension of the groundbreaking Abraham Accords.
Which went
Those
so
accords
well.
saw peace forged between Israel and 4 Arab countries, and they were supported by Republicans and Democrats alike. We could call, I have a name for this new alliance. I think we should call it the Abraham Alliance.
Okay. It wasn't Palestinians, it was Hezbollah. Am I getting my facts mixed up? Hezbollah? They're not even at war with Hezbollah officially, man. The idea that they would, like, attack an Iranian consulate over that, I don't know. So much has happened. I can't keep fucking track of it all. It's crazy. It's so bad, man. We're never getting peace in the Middle East. As long as Israel exists in this form, we can never get peace in the Middle East. We can have peace in the Middle East with a Jewish state in the Middle East. We cannot have peace in the Middle East with Israel in its current form in the Middle East. We can't do it. It's not possible. It's insane.
I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering.
What the f did I just... Oh, I just hit 1. I'm sorry.
Not too much to ask. For bringing that coalition together, Abraham Accords. And they were supported by Republicans. Call it the Abraham Alliance.
There we go. Okay.
I want to thank President Trump for his leadership in brokering the historic Abraham Accords.
Israel will never prevail over Iran. Iran is a real culture. Israel is not.
Israelis were relieved that President Trump emerged safe and sound from that dastardly attack on him, dastardly attack on American democracy. There is no room for political violence in democracies. I also want to thank President Trump.
They're going to call you a Nazi for that one. Yeah, because whenever people are like, whenever people point out that Israel has no culture except for like the borrowed bits of Jewish culture that they get from all around the world, people call you, dude, that's not Israeli culture. That's Jewish culture. If it's culture that's just like cobbled together, whatever you get from like local Arab culture or like the Palestinian culture and or whatever you pull in from Brooklyn or New York or whatever, that's not the same as like a national culture. Jews are not Israel. Israel's a Jewish state. Shut the f up with this bullshit. Israel is a state that claims to be Jewish and has a large Jewish population. There's no real any such thing. There's no innate transposition of an ethnic or religious identity to a state. A state is a legal entity, not a cultural identity. That's like ethno-state logic, okay? We say Israel is a Jewish state as a kind of rhetorical shorthand. Like, yes, they have the Hebrew star in the flag. Yes, they ostensibly represent the interests of Jewish people, but we know they don't actually. They'll buy into the ethno-nationalism, man.
For all the things he did for Israel, from recognizing Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights, to confronting Iran's aggression, to recognizing Jerusalem as our capital and moving the American embassy there.
There is no Jewish culture. Yeah, it's like saying there's Christian culture. Okay, what do you mean by like Christian culture? What do you mean like what was I say? Albanian, not Albanian. Armenian? Do you mean like Italian, Southern or Northern? Do you mean like German? Do you mean like American, like Mormon Christian? Like, what do you mean? Like, there's like a billion Christians. A lot of them would kill each other. Do you mean the Fourth Crusade, where the Orthodox Christians were betrayed by the Catholics and they sacked Constantinople? What are you talking about? Or Istanbul?
That's Jerusalem, our eternal capital, never to be divided again. My dear friends, Democrats and Republicans, despite these times of upheaval, I'm hopeful about the future. I'm hopeful about Israel because my people, the Jewish people, emerged from the depths of hell, from dispossession and genocide. And against all odds, We restored our sovereignty in our ancient homeland. We built a powerful and vibrant democracy, a democracy that pushes the boundaries of innovation for the betterment of all humanity. I'm hopeful about America because I'm hopeful about Americans. I know how much the people of this country have sacrificed to defend freedom. America will continue to be a force for light and good in a dark and dangerous world. For free peoples everywhere, America remains the beacon of liberty its extraordinary founders envisioned back in 1776. Working together, I'm confident that our two nations will vanquish the tyrants and terrorists who threaten us both. As Israel's Prime Minister, I promise you this: no matter how long it takes.
I wonder how all of the Nazis who support Trump reconcile their support of him as like the based epic Le Pepe red-pilled white supremacy man with the constant unrelenting glazing and palling around with Netanyahu. Are people in YouTube chat seriously arguing about the culture thing? You people are insane. Culture is a completely nebulous, indeterminate term. You could argue a single household has a specific culture. When I said Israel has no culture in that respect, what I mean is that Israel is a settler colonial state. It's a hastily slapped together mess of like local Arab influence, which they are continuously dispossessing and suppressing, along with dozens and dozens and dozens of expats and immigrants from all over the world. It's a colonial project. The culture of Israel is the culture of the homogenate that enter it, but it's not the same as having a regional culture that is based on like local trends that have developed over a long time. Those are distinct things. If you disagree, then you're kind of historically ignorant, man. That's just sort of how it works. Given enough time, Israel could form a distinct identity of its own, but right now its only real distinguishing identity is the one democracy in the Middle East, the Zionist ethno-state, you know? Colorism, white supremacy, and European settler colonial ethnic supremacy are all like key components of cultural development there. But when you ask things like, okay, what is Israeli architecture like? What is Israeli food like? You're not going to get many strong answers because in a lot of cases, they're just cobbled together answers from the basic bits and pieces of the area that was there before and from the people that have come over. That's just what happens when you're new there. The modern Israeli state is not the same as the continuous Jewish presence in what is now Israel for thousands of years. If you believe that, then you'll believe Lebensraum. You'll believe, oh, the historic German colonial settling of Poland means that actually Western Poland is German territory. You're a moron. You're an idiot. You've been duped. That is not they are not a continuous inheritor of that cultural legacy. And that's probably because historically the Jews that have lived in Israel are a little bit too Middle Eastern for the tastes of the Jews who have come down there. You know, a lot of the Jews in Israel are European and American, right? A lot of the Jews that have lived in that region for thousands of years are a lot more brown and a little bit more Arab adjacent than they're personally comfortable with, which is the reason why if you look at the leadership and the power bases, the foreign investment in Israel, it's not like, oh yeah, man, my family goes back here thousands of years. It's white guys. It's white Jewish guys. Look at the cabinet, dude. They're white Jewish guys. And if you think that a Jewish guy can't be white and you're calling me anti-Semitic, oh, I don't know, man. Feels like the anti-Semitism might be coming from within the building. You think the West would back a settler colonial project that isn't fundamentally white supremacist? You moron. You buffoon. You imbecile. Vosh is overwhelmingly wrong here. Vosh is wrong here. That's cool. Like, I don't have to argue with you. I have secret tools. I have a secret tool to help me out. Wow, what an ignorant screed. Vosh needs to look at the dash. I don't care to argue with Zionists, man. Nothing that I just said is incorrect. You're just angry because you've been taught to be angry at what I said. You didn't engage with any of the underlying logic of any of the argument that I just made. You're just mad. Yeah, it's impossible for a group of people to not have a cultural amount. Paradox Express, you literally didn't engage with anything I said. You heard words and you chose to accept an interpretation of them, and you're sticking to it in spite of contrary evidence. And frankly, that's a you problem. That's not a me problem. I didn't make you like that. I didn't break your brain. I'm not your parents. I'm not responsible for whatever cognitive deficiencies have led you to be able to like completely ignore the sentiment of my message.
No matter how difficult the road ahead, Israel will not.
You say that, but Bibi has literally showcased multiple brown people to the Congress. You are obviously wrong. Is it a joke? Is it a troll or is it not? I don't know. Is it a troll or is it not? I don't know. How am I supposed to tell? It's YouTube chat. I can't look up a person's log history. How am I supposed to tell? How am I supposed to tell? I am trolling? Okay. Thank God.
Not relent. Israel will not bend. We will defend our land.
Channel
we will
history?
defend
I
our
didn't know you could do
people.
that.
We will fight until we achieve victory.
An American commentating on international culture is hilarious. You're right, it is, because American culture is international culture. We're so powerful that our culture spreads the entire world. There are people wearing Levi's in Turkmenistan, man. It's weird whenever yeah, you bend to us. The world revolves around us. The importance of making statements sometimes, like Israel doesn't have a real culture like Iran, even though that's a statement that requires clarification because it can be interpreted in ways that are objectively incorrect. The importance of making statements like that is that oftentimes people who watch you, they will latch on to statements that they will interpret uncharitably, and then rather than engage with the meaning of what you've said, they will hold on to the sentiment, the interpretation they decided to adopt, and they will take it like all the way home, you know? And it's important to say sort of aggrieved or insightful stuff like that. And sorry, I shouldn't say insightful, I guess incisive, adjective stuff, because you want to be able to test people who are fragile enough that they can't engage with sentiment like that, you know? It's very, very important. How long will it take for Israeli culture to develop? No, you're thinking about it the wrong way, Sleepy Joe Biden. There's no such thing as there not being a culture. When I say X doesn't have culture, that would be like saying X doesn't have morals. That's not actually a thing. Every person has morals. You just might disagree with how they apply them or what their standards for morals are. It's a shorthand for saying they don't have a kind of developed regional identity. This is a thing that happens, you know? Like the idea of a cohesive shared culture, something that is not meaningfully, it's something that exists in like a significant capacity, but it's something that you can refer to. So I'll ask you guys this, okay? Who do you think has more of an authentic regional culture? The Israeli Jewish population that lived there for thousands of years, along with their Palestinian brethren, or the modern Israeli Zionist state composed mostly of European, American, and like local immigrants, whatever, people who have come in to form the kind of collective settler colonial state? Both obviously have a culture, even if the latter is more disparate. Why do we say the former then? Well, because when we talk about culture, we kind of talk about a shared set of identities and ideas. We talk about something that you can point to and go, hey, yeah, like this is an identifying feature or characteristic of the population or of the region, you know? But it's hard to say that for current Israel because current Israel is a settler colonial project. Vosh, does that mean Native Americans have more culture than the other people inhabiting the US? For one, obviously, yes. Native American tribes have a way more grounded cultural identity than basically any American. Yeah, well, like for one, obviously, yes. But for two, America's no longer a settler colonial project. The project is over. We won. We're now just a colonial country. So, you know, America doesn't really have the same kind of like America isn't like cobbled together from a bunch of people who just came over here from Warsaw yesterday. Most of our immigrant groups came over here you know, like at least a century ago, the Italians, the Irish, what have you. Generally speaking, the colonial project is something that kind of comes at the cost of regional culture because you're defining yourself more by your suppression of the groups there than you are. Like, think of it this way. What was American culture before the American Revolution? Dog, it was just like British culture. There wasn't much of a local culture to American colonists. before 1776. Eventually, it grew more disparate, but they were kind of just like Britain light, man. They were British colonials, you know? They didn't have much of a regional culture because they were engaged in the project of replacing the existing region, the existing culture, you know? The divergence is something that kind of like, you know, makes you your own culture, you know? Much in the same way that I would say that like Taiwan, like the Chinese diaspora after Mao won the Civil War, the Chinese diaspora from the government that moved over to Taiwan would not have initially had much of a disparate culture, but now obviously Taiwan does have a distinct culture from China. It's not really like an empirical measurement thing. It's just kind of like, you know, we're vibing it out. That would make sense, K Comrade Robin Hood. I haven't seen Vosh this upset in a while. I take it you don't catch many streams. It's not a matter of being upset. I just want people to understand what I mean. A statement I fully defend. Vosh gatekeeping culture to his personal preferences is crazy. This is the reason why it's really, really important to make statements like this, man. You got to go on the ban spree every once in a while. These are topics that get people really, I like Thana 07ing before I even hit the ban button because she knows. It's really important to go on stuff like this because you need to be able to like weed out people who can't critically engage with the statements that you're making. You got to chill, man. I understand what you mean, but I think Israel has developed a local culture. Sleepy Joe Biden. Like I said a second ago, saying that an area has no culture is like saying an area has, or a person has no morals. It's not literally possible. A person can't literally be bereft of morals if they're intelligent enough to understand the concepts of right and wrong, which basically all humans are. They can have morals. No one doesn't have morals. It's a shorthand for saying they don't care about them or their morals are wrong or so on and so forth. You know, you're getting at another statement there. If I say if you say a person is without culture because they don't care at all about art or whatever, or they don't care at all about like media, or they don't really engage with the world they're in, you're not literally saying they are incapable with or divergent from culture. You're saying they don't really engage with it. Likewise, when I say that Israel doesn't have culture like Iran, I'm comparing Israel's current existence as a settler colonial state to Iran, which you can draw longevity back to literally like millennia. Like Iran today is the successor state of a direct cultural lineage that you can point to and refer to going back a really long way. This is the reason why it bothers me when people pretend that modern Zionist Jews in Israel are like direct descendants of the 13 or like they've been in Palestine their whole lives or whatever. Like if you live in Iran, there's a very decent possibility that you can trace not only your bloodline, your lineage back a very long ways, all the way back in Iran, or you can kind of refer to the cultural longevity, but like you can like see the roots, you know what I mean? But that's not the case for a bunch of the expats that have come over to Israel. How could it be? A lot of them have been in Europe for thousands of years. This direct association with blood and land, it's a fascist lie. Aruru, I know that American and British cultures had diverged, but they were definitely not distinct in the way they are today, in large part because the colonial project kind of mandates that you be an extension of the culture of the state that you're repping as a colonial force. I think some people think pedantry equals cleverness. I think that's the thing that bothers me. We're touching on a tricky subject here, and I'm kind of trying to watch a speech by Netanyahu. So rather than people hearing what I'm saying and thinking, oh, I understand that point, I'm going to like, okay, this is what he meant, or like, this is what I take from it. They try to like one-up me, which for one, you can't. I'm a YouTuber. No one comes even close to our intellectual echelon. Thank you. And for two, you're engaging in a kind of anti-intellectualism. It makes you stupider than me. If you trust me enough to watch my content and engage with what I say for my political arguments, I mean, why are you watching me if you place no stock in what I say? You should be smart enough to try to seek out the truth in what I say, rather than being a pedant and argue with the particulars in a subject complicated enough that you could fill a book with it. Vosh tried to say Israel doesn't have culture, and that's why Israelis are innocent and actually love Muslims. What are you doing, man? If you don't hold Israelis accountable for Zionist government, why do you hold white people accountable? Oh, you're a Nazi. Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. Thank you for the search channel activity thing. Incomprehensible. That man doesn't speak for YouTube chat, yeah. Do you think Arab Jews who fled from Arab nations are settler colonizers? And if so, is it comparable to European Jews who initially colonized Israel? I mean, they're two distinct groups, but you can be a settler colonizer even if you fled from an Arab nation. Sure, you fled from an area where you were like a dispossessed minority so that you could dispossess others. Yeah, that's totally possible. Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time. I mean, it happened in Europe too. Did we arrive at something approximating a conclusion? Can we just move on now? And listen to Netanyahu talk?
Victory over liberty, rather victory of liberty over tyranny,
There we
victory
go.
of life over death,
This is what we
victory
want.
of good over evil. That's our solemn commitment.
I think it was just a knee-jerk reaction. The idea of saying Israel has no culture might be seen as something a Nazi might say if you weren't expecting it. I respectfully disagree. Nazis usually argue that Jewish people have such a distinct culture that they literally like use it as the perch from which they want to destroy Western civilization. The kind of person who might say Israel has no culture in like a derogative, like maybe anti-Semitic way, they would be more of a like pan-Arab nationalist or like it'd be more of like an Arab Israeli beef than like a Nazi Israeli beef. Really, when I see people say Israel has no culture, I usually, I'm not gonna lie, see it from leftist American Jews who are disgusted with the ways in which Israeli Zionists appropriate Arab culture and claim it as their own. The way there are some Israelis who will be like, yeah, man, I love Israeli cuisine, like hummus. And it's like, what? What the f are you talking about? Israel's been around for like 80 years, man. You barely even have a culinary history to build upon. Maybe in the future you will, but like, what are you on about, you know? And then it's like, well, no, Israel's been around for 4,000 years. Like, no, it hasn't. Shut up. And that's what it gets to, you know? That's the gist of it, I guess.
And we will continue to work with the United States and our Arab partners to transform a troubled region from a backwater of repression, poverty, and war into a thriving oasis of dignity, prosperity, and peace. In this noble mission, as in many others, Israel will always remain America's indispensable ally. Through thick and thin,
Yeah, you do so much for us, man.
through thick and thin, in good times and in bad, Israel will always be your loyal friend and your steadfast partner. On behalf of the people of Israel, I came here today to say thank you, America. Thank you for your support and solidarity. Thank you for standing in Israel, with Israel, in our hour of need. Together we shall defend our common civilization. Together we shall secure a brilliant...
Common civilization is an insane thing to say when you're an ethno-nationalist in the Middle East, in a nation that was created by a collective diaspora of Jews from the Middle East and Europe and America to ostensibly flee anti-Semitic persecution from both the West and the Muslim world. Like the perceived synchronicity here, it's just remarkable. None of this makes sense if you understand Israel to be what they claim it is, and all of it makes sense if you understand it as a Western settler colonial project. Do you really think America and Britain would have allowed Israel to develop as it did if they weren't just a proxy for our political interests? Do you really think that Western Europe gave a shit about Israel as a safe space for Jews? When have they ever cared?
Future for both our nations.
He's actually making the same point as Vosh here. Israel isn't a civilization. It's part of America/Europe civilization. Yeah, if Israel is meant to be the, like, cultural through line for thousands of years of Jewish presence in the region, how the f could it be a shared civilization with the West? Their civilization would predate ours by millennia. It predates ancient Greece. It predates Rome. Shared civilization makes it sound a lot more like it's, you know, just a sort of, like, homogenate white supremacist settler colonial extension of Western power, which is of course what it is. But that's kind of the point that I was making, man.
May God bless Israel, may God bless America, and may God bless the great alliance between Israel and America forever.
There were Jews that have always lived there, though. Yeah, there are Arabs that have always lived there. Evergreen, I understand what you're saying, but the honest truth is that I don't give a shit. The distinct cultures of groups thousands of years ago has no bearing on like the legitimacy of. I don't know what argument you're making is, I guess, what you mean. Oh, I'm sorry. You're talking about like thousands of years back or whatever. I don't know. Okay, whatever. It's not like the Hebrews of 3,000 years ago are the same as the Hebrews today. Sorry, I'm really autistic about history. Forgive me. It's okay. I forgive you. Tuck. Yeah, they're actually arguing that the Hebrews and Israelites are not the same as the modern Jewish people occupying the valley. They were agreeing. In fairness, cultural identity and historicism are very like nebulous topics, and it's really difficult to pin something down. American culture today is not at all like American culture 100 years ago. But you know what's an element of American culture that has been continuous throughout the past 100 years? Blue jeans. It sounds dumb, but like blue jeans are as American as apple pie. And they've, you know, from like 150 years ago to today, they have remained kind of an icon of American clothing and the values carried with blue jeans. You know, their stability, their sturdiness, their casual nature, the fact that they're like work clothes. And it's like, okay, but America 150 years ago was nothing like America today, but blue jeans have been there through it all. And it's like, I don't know. And they come from France? No, blue jeans from Levi's. Levi Strauss jeans. Using copper rivets, man. Yeah, Fetterman wore a suit so that he could look good for his big wet boyfriend, Netanyahu. They were worn by slaves working in the mines. I'm pretty sure they weren't, because they were made in California, which was not a slave state, and they were made after slavery. I think they were just used by miners. Anyway, culture's a difficult topic to nail down. I don't think it makes a group of people illegitimate or bad or wrong to not be very culturally developed. And I don't think Israel is very culturally developed. I don't think that means they're a lesser people or anything. I think it's usually indicative of other issues, like in this case, the fact that they're a settler colonial project. The reason why I mentioned it relative to Iran is because I think Iran has a much more legitimate hold as a regional hegemon. Think about it. Saudi Arabia, Israel, and Iran are all competing for like regional hegemon status in the Middle East. Israel is hated by everyone there. Saudi Arabia is hated by everyone there. Iran isn't, you know? Saudi Arabia gets their power through oil. Israel gets their power through foreign investment and weapons and, you know, the Western military-industrial complex. Iran gets their power largely through the cultural spread of their values and their money. They pay plenty of insurgent groups, but like Iran is seen as a bulwark against Western imperialism. Many Shiites in the Middle East think of Saudi Arabia as a traitor to the West, you know? They see Wahhabists as like a freak cult that's taken control of Mecca. But ultimately that the kingdom of Saud is just like an extension of our oil interests, which in fairness they are. That is completely correct. So, you know. You're mixing up Sunni and Shia? Wait, am I? No, I was correct. I said Shia Islam. Yeah. No, they aren't. Saudi Arabia has agency, not everything is us. Dude, if you don't think that Saudi Arabia is basically just an extension of, what do you think Saudi Aramco is? Saudi Arabia was like a bunch of tribes that nationalized Western oil investment. The kingdom exists only because they bribed us into not invading them to take back over the oil investment, you know? Yeah, it's a corporation masquerading as a nation state. Vosh, you literally just said, quote, you can't force culture and Israel... Wait, you kind of can force culture, and Israel's only interest is imposing force on Arabs? Wait. Lily the Gaylord PhD, you're just making shit up, right? What are you talking about? Israel's only interest is imposing force on Arabs? You're like essentializing and connecting a bunch of points, twisting them to try to impose a hypocrisy. There's no hypocrisy present.
The meeting of the two houses now dissolved. The House will continue in recess, subject to the call of the chair.
How supportive of the Israeli government's bullshit do you think Kamala will be compared to Biden? Well, apparently Kamala is not interested in keeping Anthony Blinken as Secretary of State, so clearly she's not happy with his decisions. Philip Gordon will likely be Kamala Harris's national security nomination. The rejection of the three-phase hostage deals from Israel would ensure endless conflict with Hamas. If she really does pick Phil Gordon, that could be a massive switch up in how we handle the our relationship with Israel. Is he a war criminal? Why would a U.S. official be a war criminal? He's not in the Pentagon. He's a U.S. He's a member of our State Department. Donald Trump just told his nephew Fred that Fred's disabled son should just die. Protest in D.C. They dyed fountains around the Capitol red. They dumped a bunch of maggots and stuff onto the delegation's table. Thousands of protesters drawn to the U.S. Capitol. Yeah. 400 Jews arrested? Nice. How pro-Semitic of them. Oh shit, the maggot stuff was real? Has it been disproven? Was it just a random table? I mean, I see it being posted on the Washington Post. Bet that really bugged Netanyahu. Hypothetically, if the population of the UK was suddenly dispersed across, say, Asia for 1,000 years, then they reconvened the British Isles, would remnants of British culture still exist? It depends on what you mean by remnants, and it depends on the behavior and circumstances of the dispossession, the diaspora. If a culture doesn't really want to integrate with the broader culture that much, sometimes you can have longevity that persists for a while. For example, Native Americans on the reservations to some extent have elements of their culture that have been preserved for a pretty long time. But Native Americans who have just integrated into American culture broadly are kind of American. Let's be real here. If there was a Native American family that integrated back in the mid-1800s, and right now there's a kid of theirs named John who's going to a high school in Arizona, and he's just chilling, is he a heriter of Native American culture? Maybe his parents are kind of I don't know, maybe his parents kind of know the who knows, right? They've kind of left one cultural tradition to join another one, namely American culture, you know? Whatever that means, because there's more than one American culture. American Southwestern suburban culture, who knows? Why can't he both? Well, you can, but I'm constructing a hypothetical in which he doesn't. Romani in Europe are pretty infamous for holding onto their culture pretty aggressively and not wanting to integrate. Something which is, by the way, very much their right, and I defend their right to do that. You know, Quebec. Let's not talk about those people. Do you see a way for Jewish people to get a place to live in the Middle East without anti-Semitism while also not doing what they're doing with Palestine? The thing that bothers me the most, I guess, is just the idea that Jews should have a homeland in the Middle East when a lot of the Jews who went over there are European. Why are you in the Middle East, dog? Because there are other Jews there? Okay, there are Jews in New York because there were Jews there for thousands of years. Okay, what does that have to do with you? That's not your culture. We're talking about a Jewish family that has theoretically lived in New York for centuries, or they could have been living in Poland for 1,000 years, man. What connection do you have to the Holy Land apart from some incredibly abstract, long-standing bloodline bullshit, which I don't care about or believe in, you know? Your culture is Polish culture, or maybe Jewish Polish culture, you know? And there's a ton of, there were a ton of Jews in Poland, you know, you all know what happened there. But yeah, I don't know. I guess for me, it's just kind of sad. The tying of, like, from my perspective, because I grew up in a very, very, very Jewish neighborhood in America. For me, like, because I'm American and I believe in things like birthright citizenship, if you live in America, you're an American. And whether or not you belong to American culture, you contribute to American culture. You can be like an Iranian Jew, which is the neighborhood I grew up in. It was filled with Iranian Jews who call themselves Persians because they don't like associating with the Iranian regime. Even if your culture is foreign, and by the way, the Iranian Jews that I grew up with, a lot of them were literally like born in Iran. We're not talking about natural born American citizens who are 2 steps removed. We're talking about a fresh wave of immigrants. And to me, they're American because they live in America. Maybe they make food different from what, I don't know, the average American eats, and they speak Hebrew and they go to synagogue and whatever, but they're American. They're in America, therefore they're American. That's American culture, you know? So the idea to me of like, oh, hold on, the beacon has been raised. It's time to create the Jewish homeland again. You actually belong here. You're kind of robbing the world of Jewish culture, and you're kind of robbing Jewish people of the feeling of authenticity in their homes. A Jew who lives in America should feel like their Jewish culture is a part of American culture. America is their home. They were born there. It's their nation. They're a citizen of that nation or an immigrant to it, you know, either or. And the culture that they contribute and the culture they take from it are both an integral part of their experience as an American Jew. And I'm just saying Jews, but this is the case with any group, Irish people, Chinese people, whatever, like any group. But like, the idea of Israel being like the Jewish center, the Jewish homeland, it's like, oh, that kind of like, I don't know, speaks to the perceived inauthenticity of all those other experiences. Now it's not like Jewishness and American culture are part of each other. Now it's like Jews have been waiting in America, practicing and preserving their distinct Jewish beliefs, waiting for a chance to go to the Holy Land where they belong. That's why it made me so upset when Biden was at that dinner and he said, you know, there's not a Jew alive that would be safe without Israel. And it's like, what the do you mean, dude? Israel isn't safer than America. Are you kidding me? It's America. Israel had to build an Iron Dome. Like, America is America. Yeah, I think of myself as American, not Polish, you know? To me, I do actually, like, I'm a sap for this. I believe in the melting pot thing, okay? I think that if you're in America, you're American, okay? I don't really care about American values or American culture. I think of them as languages and like trends, some of which I prefer to others, by the way, you know? I think the cultural values of democracy and liberty are better than the cultural values of authoritarianism and suppression, right? If you want to say that American culture is liberty, which in some ways it is and in a lot of ways it isn't, then I defend that element of American culture. If you want to say that an element of Muslim culture is misogyny, which, let's be real here, you look at the Muslim world, yeah, a little bit, then I disagree with that value, and I would fight that value being kind of normalized and incorporated in America. That doesn't mean that all misogyny comes from Muslims, obviously, but let's be realistic here, okay? So I think it's okay to fight for the culture you like. I don't really think of it as like American culture. When I say American culture, what am I talking about? Is Appalachia culture anything at all like Los Angelian culture? Is New York anything at all like people who live in like Nebraska or whatever? God, no. A lot of it is the urban-rural divide, but in a lot of cases, it goes more deep than that. In a lot of cases, it really is like regional stuff, you know? People, like, if you're just talking big cities, you want to go to the Four Corners, man. People who live in New York, Seattle, Los Angeles, and Miami, there are very, very, very different cultures there, even though all of those are megacities. I mean, New York is the most megacity, but you know what I mean. They're all major cities. There's no American culture. In reality, like, I don't really know if culture exists in the way people refer to it as. People say Chinese culture. Do you have any idea how big Chinese society is? Do you know how big China is? Their population is like 4 or 5 times ours. Do you have any idea how old China is? Jesus, what the fuck is Chinese culture, man? I don't know. Or India. India is so big and culturally diverse that you can't even rule it. It's like rule it, like you saw this with the recent election with Modi. Ruling all of India is like being the inheritor to Genghis Khan. Like, oh yeah, man, let me just rule over the half the known world. Like, yeah, let me deliver a speech that'll be understood in the languages spoken from this corner to that corner, you know? It's not really possible. The larger the world gets, the harder it is to get a grasp on all of it. America's huge, and we're not even a fraction, well, we are a fraction the size, you know what I mean? We're a fraction the size of India or China. Anyway, that's the reason why this culture stuff bothers me, I guess. I just want people to kind of like look at the underlying message a bit. Anybody who thinks that when I say Israel has no culture, I'm making a disparaging remark about Jewish people knows nothing about either A, Jewish people, or B, my beliefs on Jewish people. Or like anything. Like a disparagement of a hastily cobbled settler colonial project and its sort of like cultural synchronicity has nothing to do with like, and what is Jewish culture, by the way? Because Jews are all over the world, man. You think Jews in New York are the same? Like, you think like the Ashkenazi Jews are like the Persian Jews that I grew up with in Beverly Hills? I mean, they go to synagogue. They got the hat. I guess you've got that. But like, I mean, the Jews that I grew up around didn't even go for the bagel thing. You know? I'm a little mad about that. I mean, there were bagel shops in Los Angeles, but that's mostly a New York, like, Ashkenazi Jew thing. And frankly, I'm a little bit upset because I'm a big bagel boy. You know I'm a good bagel boy. Linkard, I agree. Keep in mind, though, that America is one of the only countries in the world that has the attitude that we have towards, like, being an American, you know? Most countries don't even have birthright citizenship. In like France, for example, being born in France doesn't make you a French citizen. Your parents have to be French. You have like you don't get the privilege of becoming, like, a lot of people don't understand that. In America, if you are born in American soil, or an American embassy, or an American airline flying over America, or in like an American airline flying over international waters that is chartered in America, or anything like that, you are born an American citizen. Is that even true? Yes. Yes, that is completely true. That is American birthright citizenship. Yeah, that's what Project 2025 wants to get rid of. You instantly are granted and privileged with the rights enshrined in citizenship. Like that. And unironically, I think that's like actually like incredibly based. Like that is an element of American culture that is incredibly based and red-pilled, you know? The glorious melting pot, you know? Here's a map of countries that have it. Oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that much of a New World thing. That's interesting. Anyway, the point of what I'm trying to get at is that America is the greatest country on earth. And if you disagree, then you're with the terrorists. Who's with me? When you attack culture, it's racism. When Vosh attacks culture, it's based criticism with nuance. Yeah, that can be true. The problem is, oftentimes when people criticize culture, they engage in something called essentialism, which is the main thing I argue against in this channel. If you can apply criticisms in a non-essentialist way, you can unironically cheat code your way through a bunch of stuff that would otherwise be really bad. For example, I'm going to speak straight from the heart. A lot of Muslim world, it's shit, man. You kidding me? I know there are exceptions or whatever, but holy shit, you take a look at, like, here are countries that are majority Muslim, and here are their attitudes on LGBTQ people. That, I don't know about that one, Chief. I'm not going to pretend there aren't like commonalities there, but is that like a fundamental property of Muslims? No, because American Muslims, for example, are actually like more progressive than American Christians on average. So it's like, okay, I mean, I'm not big on religion in general, but it's like, is Islam inherently more queerphobic? I don't think so. I don't think anything is inherently anything. I think that it's circumstantially more queerphobic because of like a whole bunch of stuff. Colonialism, world history, blah, 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 blah. It's a whole thing, you know? But if I made the criticism like, hey, I think the Muslim world is pretty, you know, homophobic, I couch that in the anti-essentialist language, you know, or at least I hope that's the sentiment in which it's taken. I tend to be clear about that. But a lot of people will say it and they just kind of mean like Muslim people fundamentally, right? Like a lot of people will say, you know, oh yeah, Muslims do X. And what they mean is like brown people from the Middle East, and they mean it essentially. They don't mean like historical circumstances have arrived at this consequence. What they mean is like, no, they're just like that. Most people can't think beyond that point. Most people can't advance their thinking beyond they're just like that, you know? Mostly because most people are really dumb. But we need to fight against that. If you can be anti-essentialist in your criticisms, then you can do a lot of wacky stuff, you know? You can do a lot of wacky stuff. It's like a cheat code. Vosh, that map was misleading and very reductive. Here's the Wikipedia. Okay, but have you considered the possibility that I don't like the French and just want to insult them?